The long-finned Australian eel. The eastern coast of Australia is home to the long-finned Australian eel. Although there are 4 species of eel along the east coast, the long-finned eel is the most prevalent and fascinating to study. The image of an eel generally conjures up thoughts of slimy, unpleasant creatures which look like snakes. Yet the life cycle of these aquatic species is so remarkable that we'll certainly gain a new respect for them when we learn about it. Female adult eels inhabit freshwater sources such as dams, lakes, or rivers. These can be a long way inland from the coast and east of the Great Dividing Range. A female eel can live for a long time, between 10 to 50 years, before deciding it's time to reproduce. Her entire life is spent growing, fattening, and producing up to 20 million eggs, which will only be released once. When the time comes to reproduce, she'll set off on a journey from which she'll not return. She'll make her way to the ocean, which could well be no easy task. There may be dam walls in the way, or sections of water running across a field, and other obstructions, but she will determinedly continue to the mouth of the water source she's been living in, and there join the male long-finned eels. The males spend their lives in more brackish waters around the river mouths and marshes, not undertaking the mammoth journey inland with the females. Once united, the male and female eels will set off on a journey of a few thousand kilometres.
But all sorts of other changes occur to adapt them to the environment. Their eyes enlarge and their eye pigments change so that they can see better in oceanic waters. They build up fat reserves before they go. Their pectoral fins, the fins on the side of the body, get larger. Their gut totally degenerates because they don't feed, and the anus constricts to restrict water loss from the body. So there's quite some amazing changes that occur as they make that migration.
How do they know where they're going? There's no easy answer unless you believe in intelligent design, that these creatures are programmed to know their way around a vast and complex system of tides and currents. The eels make their way to the deep ocean around New Caledonia, where the depth can be from 300 to 3,000 meters. Once spawning has occurred, the eels die. Their fertilized eggs drift aimlessly on the ocean before hatching into leaf-shaped larvae. Within about 2 years, the tides and currents bring them to the eastern seaboard of Australia, where some strange things happen. As soon as the water quality changes from oceanic to inland, they become colourless, and therefore are called crystal eels. This makes the tiny larvae difficult for predators to see. But there's another remarkable fact. The tiny larvae head to certain water streams and not to others. This can be determined by carefully examining them when they're fully grown. As adults, the eel's features change slightly as they swim down the coast from northern Australia and around to the southern coast of Victoria. Sometimes New Zealand eels join in this procession, but they always return to New Zealand. Scientists have discovered that each species of eel returns very closely to the geographical position where its mother started her journey. How do these long-finned Australian eels know where to go? How is it possible that a very small creature which has been spawned in the ocean around New Caledonia and which floats aimlessly with the tides and currents could end up in a particular water stream? Marine scientists find it baffling, but it's believed that there must be some sort of memory transference between the female eel and her eggs, and as we progress through the lifestyle of the larvae and elvers, this fact appears even more remarkable. Having entered estuaries and river mouths as crystal larvae, the males and females then commence separate journeys. The males will stay in the brackish waters and live out their lives until it's time for reproduction, while the female crystal larvae will make their way into fresh water. Again, we need to ask, how do these creatures know where they're going? They will, for instance, swim over a dam wall if one's been built along the water source they're following. The transparent nature of their appearance means that they can leave the deeper water and flip along the sides of the watercourse and around obstacles with little likelihood of their being picked off by predators. Even though they're aquatic creatures, they can leave the water for a time as they continue their journey. And as they swim along, they start eating food in fresh water rather than salty water. However, as soon as they change their diet like this, their colour changes from crystal clear to a darker, pigmented skin tone, and that's when they become known as elvers. And so the swimming journey of the female elvers continues. The spotted colour they display will help camouflage them during their long journey once they're past the major obstacles and are now swimming in streams and creeks. Instinctively, they'll swim upstream against flowing fresh water. Eventually, they'll find their way to a lake, or a dam, or another large water source. And there's a very high likelihood that this is the place in which their mothers previously lived, before they started their long journey to breed. Once the eels are established in a secure water source, they settle down to the leisurely life of an adult, just waiting for food to pass by. Perhaps an insect landing on the water surface, or a small crustacean emerging out of the mud. The long-finned eel can live for a considerable period on poor quality food. However, in good conditions, they'll mature more quickly. Scientists aren't quite sure how this female eel decides that her adult life is almost over and that it's time to set off on the long journey to reproduction and death. There are so many enigmas surrounding the life cycle of the Australian long-finned eel, which scientists alone cannot fathom. The eel's various stages of development cannot be reproduced in a laboratory. Their incredible instincts concerning navigation, tides and currents, and how this information can be passed on to an unborn larva in an egg, is astonishing. Yet, if we examine the eels around the eastern coast of Australia, we'll find the same eels in the same places decade after decade. Truly, this is a remarkable testimony to an almighty God who has endowed the eel with an understanding quite beyond ours in some respects. There's no room for possible or probable actions or conditions, and no viable explanation for the creature's colour changes, and no accounting for the ability of the tiny larvae and smaller elvers to survive on land as well as in water. In fact, there's absolutely nothing to give the evolutionist hope that there's anything logical or reasonable about the bankrupt theory he believes in. Don't take eels for granted the next time you see one. The amazing complexity of their life cycle shouts out loud that there is an all-wise creator in the heavens who's made all things wonderfully and fully endowed with the capacity to survive on earth without any external interference or guidance.